Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I want to talk about the recently announced game Mavericks Proving Grounds. This teaser trailer just shows a little bit of what the in-game world's going to look like, and it features a 400-player Battle Royale game mode. PC Gamer recently published a 17-minute long interview with one of the game's lead developers who gave us a lot of information about what we can expect in this massive Battle Royale shooter. From the sounds of things, it seems like they're focusing on one massive map right now that's 16 kilometers in diameter and 12 square kilometers overall. The landscape seems to represent northern English, Scottish landscapes, but it's also got beaches, dense foliage, mountains, fields, basically a very large variety of biomes on the same map. But the developers also advertised a destructible environment, highly destructible environment. They said that other games, and I think they're kind of alluding to games like Rainbow Six Siege, have a huge high fidelity level of destruction, but they do it on very small, highly crafted maps. They said that they're providing the same level of destruction, but on a massive open world scale. And not only will the environment feature destruction, but players will also leave trails as they move around. The foliage is very much reactive. There'll also be wildlife, so you'll probably see something like deers or rabbits or something moving around. It sounds like the world that they're creating is extremely interactable and feels much more alive than some of the other static Battle Royale games out there. Now you might be sitting there and thinking, okay, well this all sounds great on paper and this little teaser trailer looks good, but it's not really representation of what the final game is going to be like. How are they possibly going to handle a much higher fidelity game world and 400 players at the same time? Well, the developers talked a little bit about their spatial OS technology that allows them to basically use multiple servers and scale up the amount of servers that they need to handle the player load on a map, and basically just load in what the player needs rather than feeding the player all the information from all 400 players simultaneously around the map. They just load in what they need as they need it, and this is also supposed to help client-side performance as well. So rather than having an incredibly slow client-side game and an incredibly server-intensive game, Spatial OS allows them to divide up the load properly. Now, of course, this is just what the developer said. We haven't seen any actual proof or performance analysis of the game itself, but it is promising and they seem pretty confident in their abilities to handle the player load. In fact, the developer said that they could easily scale the game up much bigger, and they have a MMORPG side of the game that's supposed to come out after the PvP side, and they can easily handle, I think he said, like 1,000 players on a server, and that it could just essentially scale as needed, which is kind of crazy, but it wouldn't be the first game that could handle that many players on one server. PlanetSide 2 has certainly done similar things, but the developer speaking about it, James Thompson, seemed to be hyper aware of the main issues in the current popular Battle Royale games like latency and tick rate and stuff like that, and he indicated that they were also able to reduce that in this game and really improve it again with their special spatial OS technology or whatever it is. Now, aside from trying to make a Battle Royale that's bigger, better looking, has a higher fidelity game world in terms of destructible environments, they also said that it's not just going to be a typical straightforward Battle Royale in which the game world just shrinks down and you have to kill each other. There will be objectives along the way that players will want to risk, like going after to try and improve their odds of winning. You could think of this as like maybe the PUBG loot crates that fall out of the sky, but I have a feeling that it's going to be a bit more in depth based on how he spoke about it, but we'll just have to wait and see what that means exactly. I think that is sort of the future of Battle Royale games in general, is adding objectives and interesting tasks along the way to sort of spice up the gameplay and make that mid-game more interesting. He also indicated that they're aware of the slow mid-game on most Battle Royales right now, and that they're designing this game so that it doesn't have that or suffer from that. Alright, so when are we actually going to be able to play this game and see if all these amazing ideas live up to the developer's claim? Well, they want to start the beta in early 2018, so that could really be any time. I believe you can sign up for the beta on the Mavericks website if you're interested in that. I'm quite excited for this. It's interesting to see, like, why would a Battle Royale with 400 players be better than one with 100 players? And I think a lot of that comes down to sort of the pacing or what you want out of a battle royale game. You know, if you want a higher paced or a more action intensive game with a similar length to it, then adding more players is definitely a way to go. You know, if you have a battle royale game that you want to last 30 minutes on average, but you want it to be more action-packed, you will need more players in terms of the scale and the scope. I think what makes PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds such an attractive or enjoyable title is that it's really an adventure from start to finish. If you win the game and you play a full 30-minute round, you've probably gone through some stuff by the end of that game. So increasing that player count to make that adventure even more intense and more crazy and over the top and fun seems like it could be a really fun way of improving the Battle Royale genre, not to mention adding a reactive environment. That is one thing that's really disappointing with PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, is that you've got these buildings that can be very difficult to push into because they're just these static, fully solid environments that don't allow any bullet penetration or any sort of interesting gameplay around. It sounds like they're trying to incorporate a lot of the Rainbow Six stuff with this one, so I imagine we'll be seeing a lot of bullet penetration and wall destruction, which could make the combat much more interesting, and it could make some of the structures a little bit less desirable for the average player. On top of that, the idea of players leaving trails in like tall grass or something for other players to track and follow is really cool. So that way, if you're not seeing players or there isn't any action around you, it doesn't mean that there aren't players around you. It just means that they haven't engaged each other, and you'll have more tools to try and locate other enemies. I like this a lot. This is really cool. It sounds like they're thinking about a lot of different dynamic ways to make the gameplay more interesting and increase the strategy behind tracking other players and how you engage other players. They also said that they want to reward people for really high performance games that maybe they didn't necessarily win. I mean, we've all had those games in PUBG or in Fortnite where you go ham, you destroy everybody, and then you just get unlucky at the end, or you get sandwiched by a couple different players, and the guy who ends up winning the game had like 1 or 2 kills and you had like 15 kills or something, and you're like, man, I did way better than that guy. The developers say they want to actually reward that kind of gameplay as well. So if you are going ham and you're really going out there and engaging a lot of players and you do well but just don't win, they want to reward you in some way for it. So that sounds kind of cool. It seems like they're being very mindful of all play styles in the game. Now, in terms of what I've heard, I like everything. It sounds great. If the developers can deliver on these promises is another question. We haven't really seen it yet, but hopefully the beta will answer those questions for us. The teaser trailer is quite ominous. I do believe that it is a representation of the actual in-game graphics, which is exciting because it looks beautiful. In terms of the thematic setting, the developers did say that they're going for sort of a realistic environment, realistic gunplay, so probably modern weapons. We do see a very tall tower in the trailer. It looks somewhat like the giant obelisk tower in Half-Life 2, just this massive, almost unrealistic architecturally built tower that's just in the middle of nowhere. There might be some sort of sci-fi plot, some post-apocalyptic setting, some semi-futuristic environment, but based on the weapon sounds in the trailer, it sounds like we're getting a lot of modern weaponry, a lot of realistic weaponry, and if what the developer said about trying to make the game more realistic, it'll probably be weapons that appeal to the players who enjoy PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds weapons, you know, modern weapons, probably semi-upgraded weapons or something like that. I'm excited to see what it is. They do have the MMORPG element to it, so I'm curious to see what the world is overall. They are creating factions and stuff in the MMORPG side of things, so there is going to be a story or a history behind it, which already gives them a little bit of a leg up on the PUBG world. Now, I've said for a while that I think PUBG is a very mediocre game. It has so many performance issues, so many network issues. I think the gameplay and game design is mediocre at best. I think it's just a game that dominated a market that people really wanted and has relatively no competition. I mean, Fortnite is its competition, but Fortnite is more of the cartoony version. And so people who want to play a realistic shooter play PUBG. People who want to play a cartoony game that's probably a bit better optimized play Fortnite. But I think as soon as somebody comes along with a better Battle Royale game, the entire PUBG community is up for grabs. I really don't feel like PUBG is good enough of a game to maintain its audience once a better title comes out. And this could very well be the game to dominate PUBG and steal the audience and basically make a better battle royale, especially if they improve the performance and network latency stuff to the point where it can be something enjoyable to watch in competition and in tournament format. That would be amazing. Anyway, it just seems like we gotta wait for the beta, but if any more cool information comes out about this game, you can be sure I'll be covering it on this channel. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.